Physical versus digital games. Does it actually matter? I mean, you get to play the thing either way, so probably not, right? I've been thinking about this a lot, but especially since some recent news from Ubisoft and Microsoft came out in the last couple of weeks. I'm gonna be honest and just say right off the bat that I prefer physical games, but I have to admit that both options have their advantages and drawbacks, so that's what we're gonna talk about today. Is there an advantage to filling your shelves up with game cases, or should I just download the game instead? And what did game publishers think about all this, if anything at all? So with that out of the way, let's talk about the recent news about physical releases of games, since that's the reason I decided to make this whole video in the first place. I've been thinking about this topic for forever, but had to start working on it after Ubisoft had a quote released recently saying, quote, "One of the things we saw is that gamers are used to, a little bit like DVD, having and owning their games. That's the consumer shift that needs to happen. They got comfortable not owning their DVD collection or CD collection. That's a transformation that's been a bit slower to happen in games. So it's about feeling comfortable with not owning your game." If this wasn't enough, there has been recent news and rumors of Xbox cutting back on physical distribution, maybe even ending the practice altogether. I'm not entirely positive on the validity of some of these claims, but it seems the industry is trending this way either way. I've noticed a lot of physical collectors and amateur preservationists extremely upset about all of this, but there's also been a large group of people that see this as no news at all. So I wanted to work through my thoughts on it and start off with why I love physical collecting. First off, when you buy a physical game, there's a couple of things you're getting over a digital purchase right off the bat. To get the obvious out of the way, you get a physical game case and disc for the game. This doesn't seem like much, but there is something about it that feels important to me. Being able to buy a game and display it on a shelf gives off a similar vibe to displaying art or books. It is a representation of your tastes and interests. I think there's something to be said about that. Sure, you probably don't need to display every game you've ever played. I'm not advocating you all to become hoarders. I just think it could be nice to look over at a shelf and see a row of games you care about that represent your interests and are unique to you. Another great thing about owning your games physically is that you actually own them for real, instead of just being able to use the software attached to your account. You might wonder what the difference is, and honestly there isn't much of one until there is. When you buy a digital game and then delete it to make room for another one, you can always re-download them. But what about when the online stores eventually shut down? We've already seen this with older digital stores like the Wii. Even though you've already bought it, there is no legal way to get your digital game back if you're trying to make room. That's only one example, but there's also the whole issue of digital games being delisted because of licensing issues or any other number of reasons. 1 second it can be there and it's yours, and the next it's gone. On the flip side of owning your games in a physical format, that also means that you can easily sell those games once you're done with them. So you're able to recoup some of the money you spent on a game down the line. Or hey, maybe you just want to let your friends borrow a game you've been raving about. Well, you can do that too. Basically, you can do whatever you want with it once you've finished with it because the game isn't digitally tied to your account. Now, all these things are great, but I would be lying if I didn't say that there were some trade-offs for all these benefits. First and foremost, having all or even some of your games physically in a collection can take up a lot of space really quickly, especially if you also collect other things like books or movies, which I'm guessing is more likely than not if you appreciate collecting physical games at all. That doesn't mean that it isn't possible, but it sure can make things more difficult. You might not even realize things have gotten out of hand until you try to move or need to downsize for any reason. Now, it would be a little unfair for me to make all these comparisons clearly in favor of physical games if I didn't mention the biggest downside, the fact that physical games can easily get damaged and degraded. Whether it's yellowing, scratches, or even disc rot in some cases, there are a number of things that can happen to your games when you collect them physically. Some of these are aesthetic, while other issues with physical collections can render the games completely unusable. And while disc rot might take years to set in or never even happen in your collection at all, it's a whole lot easier to scratch a game when it's stored in a case inside of your hard drive. A lot of these issues can be avoided with proper care, but there is always the chance something will be damaged even with the best of intentions. Now, I've been talking about physical games for a while, but I think it's important to address the pros and cons of going digital and focus on that for a second, since so many people choose to buy all their stuff that way, and it currently seems like that's the way the industry is mostly heading. In fact, some estimates say that almost 90% of all game sales are digital, so clearly it's a huge market, but you could have probably guessed that already. So why do so many people choose to go that direction? Well, I mean, first off, I think you have to bring up the convenience factor. Once you buy and download a digital game onto your console or PC, it's always there ready to go until you choose to remove it to make space. That means no replacing discs or worrying about them getting scratched or damaged. Sure, you might run out of space, but that can easily be fixed with a bigger hard drive or just by deleting what you don't actually play. I mean, heck, you could just stream your games and then you don't have to worry about hard drive space at all. Even more convenient, you don't have to wait for the game to arrive at your door or go out and get it. Just put in your card info, download, and play. When you look at it that way, I think that's enough reason already to go digital for a lot of people. But then again, just downloading and playing the game only really seems easier if you are in a place that has good internet to begin with. And streaming can become a real pain if the controls of the games you're playing are really precise. There are tons of places where internet speeds are slow, and if you live there, it may be a whole lot easier to just put in a disc instead of waiting for a download that might take hours or even days to finish. This is a problem that might eventually go away, but nonetheless is a problem right now. One other big advantage that I can think of for why people might collect their games digitally is because the sale prices are just too good to pass up. Sure, physical games go on sale too, but it never seems like the discounts are as steep as what you can get on digital storefronts. When you look at collecting or buying games as something that you're trying to get the most out of for the cheapest price, it makes a whole lot of sense to just get that stuff digitally. After all, at the end of the day, you're playing the games, and if that's all you really care about, the cases or discs don't really make a difference in the grand scheme of things. And that's all I really have to say about digital games. I feel like I might not have spent as much time looking at this side of things, but I did also cover some of the main benefits of digital when I was talking about the drawbacks of physical. I could go on and on about this probably all day, but I think I've made my point. Both versions have their advantages, but at the end of the day, I'm going to buy physical for as long as it's still an option. I appreciate being able to see what I own in front of me, but I do also have to admit that like everything else in life, it has its drawbacks, and just because I prefer one over the other doesn't mean I don't also buy digital copies when it makes more sense, like with PC gaming. I feel like you just have to make that decision for yourself, and hopefully listening to me talk about the pros and cons of collecting in this way helped you a bit. But what do you think? Do you prefer to collect your games physically, or would you much rather have them all available, download on your PC or console, ready to go? Let me know down in the comments, and if you like this video, feel free to like and subscribe for more stuff like this. Thanks for watching, everyone. I'll see you all in the next video, probably in about a week.